With the addition of Dyson, there are currently 4 steel ships in the forge you could grind towards, and I'm going to give you the order that I would personally pick these ships in if it were up to me. Of course, this is a lot of just my opinion, so choices may be different, and that's okay. The lowest ship on my list is going to be the Murmansk, mostly because I don't play low tiers. Murmansk is a Soviet Omaha class cruiser. It does have a few stat differences that make her a little bit different. In a nutshell, it loses 2 casemate 152mm guns on the back of the ship, but it gains maneuverability. At 3.8 seconds, the Murmansk's rudder shift is the fastest for any cruiser at tier 4, and it has one of the smallest turning circles, 590 meters, so it's an agile little bugger. Omaha has a beefier torpedo armament as well, 12 short-range torp launchers for point defense. Murmansk, while having less torpedoes, they actually reach out to 8 kilometers, making them pretty usable. Murmansk also takes a painful hit to the concealment. Compared to Omaha, it makes it one of the worst concealments at tier 4 for cruisers, so it's a little bit scary to be sailing around going from island to island. Now, if you've taken it all into an account, it is still an interesting ship that gives you the option of using a Soviet commander on an Omaha. While Kuznetsov is really similar to Scott, having Intuitive in slot 2 is an interesting take for such a low tier cruiser. It's going to show you the direction of the nearest enemy ship, and the range buff is kind of cool, I suppose. Overall though, given how hard steel is to earn, I would rather save up for one of the higher tier ships, and that brings us to our next contender, the Dyson. There are a few reasons I would rank this ship in next to last place. For starters, if you have Hizen, Awami, Musashi, do you really need another premium tier 8 IGN battleship? If you don't have those battleships, then you could make a more compelling argument for Dyson. The biggest feature of which I would say that sets her apart are her secondaries. They come with a base range that really makes this the only viable IJN secondary battleship at higher tiers, or in the game. 6.8 kilometer base, it falls just behind the FTG in the Pommern 7 kilometer range, and it is well behind Ruperik's 7.5 kilometer range, but still, pretty beefy range. The other question, are the secondaries actually good? Well, as I understand it, unlike the Ruprecht, they do not get any sort of improved accuracy or any additional armor pin, so already they are going to be much weaker than, say, the Prince Ruprecht. However, you have a metric ton of them, 16 140mm guns and 20 127s, so in volume of fire, they're decent. It's kind of like the Flander, where they are just going to pepper ships, hopefully set them on fire, and maybe deal a little bit of damage. You can build them out past 11 kilometers, say if you used Franz von Hipper and Henrique Fernandez as inspirations, so that is pretty nice. It's a good deterrent for any ship getting close to you, and also Dyson has a unique EST, or Enhanced Secondary Targeting consumable. It groups shells 150% and reduces dispersion 60%. Now, it doesn't last the full 30 seconds like the other ESTs do, but the reload is faster. So as I understand it, this is the only consumable like this in the game, and it can make the secondaries very potent for 25 seconds at a time. The other good parts of this ship, well, she's fast, very fast. 35 knots base, that makes this the fastest at tier 8, and a 12% engine boost consumable, where most are only 8%. So that's going to bring your speed up to 39 knots. Throw on a speed flag, 40 knots. That is pretty impressive, and it's great for getting you killed. Let me explain. Turn on the afterburners on this ship and you will make it to the front line so far in front of the rest of your team, you're going to be in trouble. This is made worse because the survivability of this ship really isn't that great. Mostly you're looking at 32mm of armor all over the ship, so HE spam is going to be a big problem, especially at this tier where you have ships like Ibuki or Salem, Buffalo, Des Moines. Well, Des Moines' a tier higher, but you get what I'm saying. Lots of 203mm guns that are just going to smash you. Not to mention you have a large superstructure. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, this ship is very long. It is a long boy. It's a massive target and has a terrible 1100 meter turning circle, so you're not going to be dodging a whole hell of a lot. The last good thing I would say about this ship, it has a really impressive torpedo armament. 16 IJN torps with good speed, 10 kilometers range, and massive 21k alpha per torp. The firing angles, they're kind of like a toggle. Half of the torpedoes are on the midship and you can fire them kind of aggressively, and the other half are on the back of the ship and they would have to be launched while kiting. To be fair, Dyson, if you ever have a 1v1 against any other battleship at the tier, you can hit the speed boost and run them down with torpedoes, and that is a pretty interesting proposition. Or the torps, you could just use them for defense and zoning. It's a strong bonus for the ship, no doubt. The main guns. They're kind of garbage in my opinion. 29 seconds base reload, IJN 410s, blah blah blah. I would not call them reliable. Yeah, the Sigma is 2.0 and in theory that should make it one of the most accurate battleships in the game, but IJN dispersion is always pretty trolly. It seems to have a lot of vertical dispersion, making salvos feel wonky. And IJN dispersion is kind of backwards from what you might be used to, in a sense that at longer ranges it becomes more accurate, and worse at closer ranges. Couple that with only having 8 guns and not the greatest firing angles, it's really a mediocre to bad main armament, but I guess this ship can't have everything. It's kind of an oxymoron to me. Like, the main guns get worse as you get closer, but you have to get closer to use your secondaries and torpedoes. I don't know, something about this ship just doesn't vibe quite right with me. Remarkably though, the ship does have strong AA, so that's a nice bonus. I would say if you're looking for a unique battleship at tier 8, this thing could be for you, but honestly there are just better battleships at the tier. If you want to brawl, play Ruprecht. It's hands down the best. Awesome torpedoes, great secondaries. If you want to win games and clap butt cheeks, well, save up 1.4 million global XP for Republic, and don't let anyone tell you differently, that is a legendary tier battleship at tier 8. The Dyson is going to set you back 25,000 steel, so that is a pretty hefty price tag to boot. Our runner-up ship, we're going to stay at tier 8 for the Salem. It is likely the best premium tier 8 cruiser in the game. Some could argue Kronstadt, some could say Aegir. I love both of those cruisers, they're great, but Salem is kind of god tier, even after it was balanced out. This ship was released in a really stupid state with a 30mm upper belt and a 5.5 second base reload, making it really better than the Des Moines at legendary tier. Luckily, Wargaming saw the mistake they made and balanced it out quickly, so this is still a really potent ship after being nerfed. It's basically a Des Moines with a worse radar and a super heal. The radar only reaches 8.5 kilometers, so it's half a kilometer worse than other American radars at the tier like Seattle, Tulsa, Buffalo, and you don't get sonar. But to make up for it, you get to throw DFAA on top of the best cruiser AA at tier 8. Seriously, if a carrier sends a squadron your way, they'll be lucky to get one drop off if you pop DFAA. On top of that, the best cruiser heal at tier 8, 19,260 health per heal on my build. And with fully packed, you can have 3 of those ready to go. It gives this cruiser some crazy survivability throughout the match. The armor isn't really anything special. It looks a lot like Baltimore, a tier lower, mostly 27 mil. It can protect you from smaller gun calibers at the tier, like 380s. The Citadel is above the waterline though, so you can indeed get yeeted. The guns. It's what makes this thing amazing, of course. It is a Des Moines, so it has those auto-loading 203mm guns. 5.5 seconds on the reload. It gives you top 3 HE and AP DPM at tier 8. It is a seriously good HE spammer, and the AP has improved ricochet angles, so it's very, very good. To round out, the ship is not super fast, but it is agile and has average concealment. Really, this ship is the whole package. If you like American heavy cruisers, I'd say this is a must to round out your port. And honestly, if I were going to play solo in a cruiser at the tier, this would be one of my top choices if you really just wanted to thrash the Reds. It's very strong and very fun. The playstyle though, it can be kind of stale. You're basically island hugging close to objectives and being a support ship, and spamming. It's fun, but after several hundred games or so with Baltimore, Des Moines, Salem, Tulsa, etc., it's like, okay, I would rather do something else. Give me Aegir so I can have a sneaky, powerful AP cruiser, or give me Schroeder so I can meme secondaries, so on and so forth. So if you're kind of tired of that playstyle, well, maybe this isn't the ship for you. Still though, it is a strong boat and comes in at the same price as Dyson, 25,000 steel. Number 1 in my book is still Missouri, and for several reasons. Chief among them is because Tier 7 is the best tier in the game to grind credits, and Missouri can put up really good numbers in that regard. There is one major drawback to this battleship that I'll get to in a minute, but Missouri really is an Iowa-class battleship with a 35-second, 9.5-kilometer radar. It's one of the most potent battleship consumables at Tier 7, I would have to say, and you can have a pretty huge battle impact against destroyers where most other battleships could be helpless. There are some minor stat differences between Missouri and Iowa. Mainly, she's a little less survivable, 5,000 less HP and smaller heals. Her AP shells though, they hit harder, 400 more damage per shell. Other than that though, the stats are so similar it doesn't really matter, and you're left with an Iowa that has a amazing radar. And the Iowa is still a very, very good gun platform all these years later. It still performs well, even though it's one of the oldest ships in the game. They're fast and tanky if you play them right and have seriously amazing AA. If you have never made an Iowa AA build and divvied up with a carrier, you're really missing out. It is a ton of fun to shred enemy squadrons. The icing on the cake for Missouri is that it only costs 17,500 steel, so it makes her more affordable than the Dyson and the Salem by a good amount. It's a solid battleship and a lot of fun. The only thing holding me back from telling everyone just to go out and get this thing is because there are 8 premium US battleships at Tier 7 if you count white and black versions of ships. So if you already have Azerlane, New Jersey, Bama, Massa, that makes a case for not getting another very similar American battleship. But if you like the Iowa playstyle and you want a premium, really a better version of the Iowa with radar, this ship is for you. Let me know which steel ship you are thinking of getting next. I would love to hear from you. This is Derka signing off. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.